to the stars to discover who we are. And hidden there was a message. A secret made of space and time. Visible only to those open enough to receive it.
Captain Christopher Pike requests permission to come aboard.
Well, Commander, this is awkward, but the best way to get into a cold stream is to jump right in. I'm here to take command of the Discovery under Regulation 19, Section C.
Your directive is only instituted when an imminent threat is detected.
Federation sensors picked up 7 red bursts, spread out across more than 30,000 light years.
These mysterious signals are beyond anything we understand.
Is it a greeting? A declaration of malice? Let's find out.
Aye, sir. To impact.
I am in total free fall.
Trust us. Discovery has you. Right, ladies?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, dear.
This is the power of math, people!
We have someone in common.
My foster brother, Mr. Spock.
He took leave. It's as if he'd run into a question he couldn't answer.
Spock is linked to these signals, and he needs help. We're on a collision course with a pulsar.
Oh, what a relief. Thought we were all gonna die.
Wherever our mission takes us, we'll try to have a little fun along the way. Ruffle a few feathers.
I look forward to it.
Hit it. Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Linus, you okay? You look a little... Yes, I hear it's going around.
Bless you.
Sveiki sugrįžę į ultraetikos pasaulį. Naujas pasaulis yra ultraetika. Ultraetika išgelbėjo pasaulį. Ultraetika išgelbėjo pasaulį.
Baskin-Robbins always finds out. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania gives us Scott Lang at his most confident, which is great because he's gonna need it. The long-awaited Kang the Conqueror is here, and Scott, Hope, Cassie, and the whole Ant Gang will need to deal with him. Directed by Peyton Reed, Scott Lang's latest adventure is his weirdest journey yet, and this dude has been possessed by Michelle Pfeiffer, and another time he was a baby, so that's saying a lot. The third Ant-Man film marks a distinct shift from the first 2 movies, but seems like it's a direct tie-in to a future MCU project. We'll break all of that down, plus all the Easter eggs we could grab while just floating around in the quantum realm. But first, I need to warn you, before we get into that, I'm about to straight up spoil the whole movie. The post-credit scenes, all of it, every morsel, in all 31 flavors. You know how this works. If you haven't seen the movie yet, or if you don't want to know, now is your chance to go subatomic while we get into this.
Who are you? I'm the man who can give you the one thing you want. What's that? Time.
Okay, now that we're past the spoiler warning, let's get right into it. All of Team Ant-Man survives. Scott, Hope, Cassie, Hank, and Janet. Kang is the only major player to die. Well, so does MODOK, but we'll talk about MODOK in a sec. Quantumania is the true start of the MCU's multiverse saga.
If you think I'm evil, well, just wait.
Yes, Loki Season 1 lays out a lot of track for this, and it all plays out here, but even though Kang dies, we understand why He Who Remains was so adamant about containing his many variants and their respective timelines. Actually, this is an Ant-Man movie in name.
Thank you, Spider-Man!
What Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania largely does is set up Kang in the future of the MCU. This is a multiverse movie and an MCU movie, most of all. We open up on a flashback. It's Janet during her extended time in the quantum realm where she set up sort of a rustic base for herself. It's like an alien planet there. It's got different creatures and a desert-like vista. A man who is definitely Jonathan Majors crash lands and asks Janet for help. Back to present day, life for Scott basically rules. Everyone admires and loves him. He's honored at Baskin-Robbins, and he's written a popular memoir, Look Out for the Little Guy, which was Easter egg teased in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Hope's doing great too. She's regained control of the Pym Laboratories and gotten the Van Dyne name in there, and is working hard using her resources to help people around the world, like a hero would. And then Cassie's gotta get picked up from jail. Whoops. She's gotten arrested for protesting mistreatment of unhoused people, which is like a real-world problem, except that in the MCU, it's directly caused by the blip and not our own actual endless supply of societal structural problems, which I don't have time to get into. Point is, Cassie cares about injustices, even if they don't directly affect her, and she thinks Scott should feel that level of empathy and use his position of power to help more. Anyway, they head back to the Pym Van Dyne home to have a family meal with Scott, Hope, Cassie, Janet, and Hank. Cassie apparently calls Hank Grandpa, which is a sweet, subtle nod to how close they all are now. In a maybe nod to Back to the Future 2, they use Pym technology to expand a tiny pizza into a family-sized one for dinner, and Hank announces that he and Cassie have been working on ant science, which is a surprise to everyone else. Turns out Cassie is something of a scientist herself, and built something like a quantum realm satellite, a subatomic telescope to explore the quantum realm, and she's been sending signals there.
This isn't exactly ant science, is it, Henry?
While Hank beams with pride at her accomplishment, Janet is very alarmed by this news, and she says they have to stop immediately. But just then, energy bursts out of the satellite and sucks Janet and Hank into a vacuum. You know, like an energy vacuum. Hope suits up and follows in too, and Cassie gets pulled in as well, with Scott following close by to save her. Everybody lands in separate areas of the quantum realm, with Cassie and Scott dealing with weird sci-fi jellyfish things. They ultimately get taken captive by a group of quantum realm people. More on them in a second. Hank, Hope, and Janet land in a forested area, and Janet uses her banked survival skills to help them out. This involves knife fighting / high-fiving an alien-looking being, and by doing that, she gets them a cool quantum realm clothes and a ride on a creature. When Janet touches the creature, there's a yellow glow similar to when she touched Ghost's head in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Apparently, there's a ton we don't know about the quantum realm that Janet never told her family when she came back. There's an entire complex society in this space outside of space and time.
This changes everything we know about life, evolution, our place in the galaxy. Holy that guy looks like broccoli.
The quantum realm beings carry Scott into a building, which is alive, by the way, and Cassie, who has already been absconded and has this weird red stuff all around her mouth, tells him to drink the goo. And it's all very confusing and weird. Turns out the goo makes it so they can all speak to each other like a universal translator, so we don't have to hear the alien language sounds for the rest of the movie. The goo came from a gelatinous creature named Veb. Everybody say thanks, Veb! Thanks, Veb! Veb is notable for a few reasons. 1, he is an original MCU creature with no direct comic basis. 2, he's voiced by David Dastmalchian, who you may remember as Baba Yaga enthusiast Kurt from Ex-Con Security. And 3, Veb is Bev backwards, as in beverage, perhaps? I don't know. And 4, he has no holes. That's important to him, a gooey, potable, gelatinous flan guy. We also meet a few other characters. First, Quaz, a telepath played by William Jackson Harper. Some have theorized he's actually a character named Quasar, a character who fights using energy bands, or maybe even Mr. Fantastic himself, Reed Richards, but there's no evidence Quaz is either of these characters. He's just Quaz. He's Quaz, man, a displaced being who can read minds. We also meet Jentora, a warrior and rebel leader played by Katie O'Brien, who does have a comic book basis as a magic-wielding sorceress, and niece to Jarella, the queen of the planet Kai, who also happens to be Hulk's love interest. So she's kind of Hulk's niece-in-law in the comics, but not really. Doesn't matter. She's here in the quantum realm now. Comics Jentora is super connected to the microverse, which is a thing in the comics, and here it's just called the quantum realm. Turns out the microverse is the comic equivalent of the quantum realm, but Marvel does not own the rights to the word microverse. Hasbro does. So the MCU version of this plane has some differences, including the naming structure. Comics Jentora is a member of the Enigma Force in the microverse, and MCU Jentora is the leader of the screen equivalent Freedom Fighters in the quantum realm. The Freedom Fighters are in opposition to Kang, who they simply call the Conqueror. He destroyed all their respective homes in the quantum realm and built an incredible empire in their place, displacing the surviving inhabitants as a disparate group of rebellion fighters living on the edge of society. With a name like the Conqueror, I guess we shouldn't be surprised that Kang is an imperialist. Anyway, that all checks out with Comics Jentora's story too, except there, the one who ruined her home was Hulk's wild son, Hero Kala, a role filled by Kang in this movie since the MCU hasn't explored those Hulk storylines and they're way too complicated to get into in this current phase. Real quick, Hero Kala is not the kid briefly seen in She-Hulk, by the way. Hulk has 3 or 4 kids in the comics, which again is a whole thing we're not going to get into. Back to the quantum realm, according to Jentora, the Conqueror must be looking for Scott and Cassie if they know Janet, who is absolutely notorious here. Switching back over to Hank, Janet, and Hope, they also drink the language goo at the bar Janet took them all to while she awaits Bill Murray's character Krylar, a powerful man in the quantum realm who used to be a freedom fighter alongside Janet and who definitely also hooked up with her in the 30 Years Away. This is not speculation. It happened. Anyway, Krylar has changed a lot since Janet knew him. He's decadent, connected, and yes, he's fully in Kang's pocket and he wants to sell them all out and turn them over. Makes sense. Comics Krylar was a one-and-done microverse bad guy. There's a shootout and Hank and Janet steal Krylar's ship while Hope fights as the Wasp. Hank expands the tiny creature Krylar was going to eat live and whole, and in turn, it eats him that way. Also, apparently the ship is controlled telepathically with gooey tubes that fit over your hands like stuffing a turkey. Yum! Hank and Janet have a discussion about having their needs met by others in their 30-year forced separation and are cool about it, with Hank saying he was seeing a woman named Linda. I'm not sure who that could be, but some possibilities include Linda Carter, aka Night Nurse, the less likely Ghost Rider character Linda Littletrees, and the even less likely Linda the Duck from Howard the Duck. It may end up as something, it may be a throwaway line, who knows. Back to Cassie and Scott. Cassie wants to help the Micronauts, freedom fighters, telling Scott just because it's not happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening. But as Jentora predicted, Kang sent someone after them, the Janet affiliates, and it's the mechanized organism designed only for killing, aka MODOK, aka Darren Cross, aka Yellow Jacket from Ant-Man 1, aka the most upsetting sight I've seen in a Marvel movie, and I'm including the time Steve Rogers made out with Sharon Carter. Good lord, it's Corey Stoll's face in a very weird, huge proportion spread over the typical MODOK body, the well-known floating enormous head and tiny little arms and legs dangling about. We also get to see his bare ass. Thanks, Marvel visual effects team. Turns out, when Ant-Man shrunk Yellow Jacket infinitely at the end of Ant-Man 1, his fate was to turn into this, and he pretty much becomes Kang's subservient minion. So he went from evil CEO to evil intern. That's not a great career path, if you ask me. Anyway, Cassie suits up, yes she has one, and tries to help Scott fight off MODOK and Kang's forces, but they get captured and imprisoned again. We return to the flashback the movie opened up on, of Janet in the quantum realm the first time, and Kang, known then as the Traveler, as he crash lands into the quantum realm. Janet sees the crash and runs to his aid. His ship is broken and he's lost and confused, so Janet helps him, and over time, they become friends. Janet expresses how much she misses Hope and says she lied to her when she said she'd be right back. All she wants is that time back, to which the Traveler says he can help. He describes time as a cage designed to break you, but that he has the ability to go beyond it. Janet helps him get his well-known comic suit back in working order and repair his ship, which is advanced neurotechnology he could control with his mind. But when she touches it, she can see into his mind, and she sees terrible things. All the things he's done to destroy worlds and entire timelines. This is the stuff He Who Remains was talking about at the end of Loki Season 1. Also of note here, Janet calls him Kang for the first time.
That's the gambit!
He didn't crash into the quantum realm. He was exiled there so he could do no further harm to space and time with a purposefully sabotaged ship, which Janet had just fixed. Seeing her mistake, she runs to destroy the ship's newly restored core, and Kang makes her an offer. He says he can send her back to Hope, to the time she left, and no one would ever know, as if nothing had ever happened, promising to not hurt her timeline and universe at all, so long as she just walks away. Janet refuses, grabs the core, and blows it up with one of her PIM discs, rendering it inoperable. Instead of going home, she chooses to trap them both there forever. This is the truth she withheld from her family the whole time, and she feels awful for empowering him. She says Kang wants PIM particles to escape the quantum realm, and with Cassie and Scott, he'll have it. So we jump back to Cassie and Scott. They're talking to Kang from their jail cell, and Kang is very unimpressed that Scott is an Avenger.
You're an Avenger. Have I killed you before?
Noting he killed a bunch of them in multiple realities. It happened so many times that they all blur together, and he explains that he experiences time differently, you know. He says he knows what's coming, how it all ends, and it involves a lot of versions of him, unsurprisingly. He said the Council of Other Hims exiled him because they're afraid of him, but he's the man who can get them home, so he needs Scott to cooperate and steal something for him, and hey, he'll torture and kill Cassie for good measure if Scott doesn't comply. Kang takes Scott to the blown-up multiversal engine core. He'll need to shrink, pass through the eye, and steal what Kang wants. However, I guess there are several strange components inside the core because it includes a probability storm that can undo your mind if you're unfocused. Scott sees another version of himself, and another, and then thousands more. They all represent a choice he could make. Every choice as a physical manifestation all at once, even the Baskin-Robbins employee Scott. He gets into arguments and confusion with himself, but at that moment, Hank, Janet, and Hope arrive nearby in their search for them, and Hope picks up Scott's voice on her signal, and she flies in to help him, also confronted with the probability versions of herself. Scott hears Cassie's voice, and all the Scott alternates stop going in different directions and focus on stealing what Kang wants because they all want the same thing, to help Cassie. They make sort of a World War Z human Scott pile in an attempt to reach it, and Scott tosses a PIM disc at it but fails. Hope flies in at the last moment and helps Scott, and they're able to retrieve the piece Kang needed. Scott wants to hand it back to Kang to get Cassie back, but Janet sternly tells him not to, that there must be another way. Kang tells Scott that Janet has a way of changing her mind and not to trust her. Meanwhile, MODOK/Darren meets up with his former mentor Hank, and Hank says what I think every time I see MODOK: "Holy shit, Darren, what happened?"
Okay, stop. What is that?
Kang takes the piece he wanted and tells Scott Cassie will be fine without him, while MODOK downs Hank's ship. Janet runs after him, but Kang stops her and instead takes her away to his throne room. He asks her what she saw when she touched his mind, and she tells him a monster who thinks he's a god. Kang explains he traveled around and broke every variant, every version of himself. He saw the variants of himself were killing off the different universes, so he took control the way he knew how, by burning the broken to make a new world. His goal has been to wipe his variants out of time, which sounds a lot like what He Who Remains was able to do with the Time Variance Authority. Anyway, Cassie breaks free from Kang's guards and runs off to free more people. Hank, Scott, and Hope reconvene, and Hank has a discovery. He said he'd been picking up strange signals ever since he got there, and it took him a while, but he figured out they were coming from his ants in the quantum realm. Living in time dilation, the ants built an impressive Class II technological civilization, sort of an advanced socialism that will certainly not make any talking head pundits freak out in the discourse of this movie. Oh heavens no. Cassie frees Jentora from the jail cells, and they make a plan to free all the other freedom fighters and get a message out to all available fighters outside to come and battle. At that moment, Kang decides to get on his hologram communication system to get a message out to the quantum realm. He says, "History is not written, it is forged," in a very clear homage to a speech given by Comics King the Conqueror in Avengers Forever Volume 1, Number 1. Just then, Cassie and Jentora hijack Kang's signal, and now Cassie speaks directly to the quantum realm, rallying them all to fight back. Kang sees this and doesn't really like it, so he sends MODOK to kill her, which is the only thing this particular mechanical organism was designed for. Then Scott, in his biggest, most giant form ever, approaches Kang's compound, screaming at Kang that he lied to him and took his daughter while trashing the place with Hope, who is normal and tiny-sized. The freedom fighters rush in and help. Veb gets shot up, but he's actually fine and actually kind of pleased to have holes now. Then he grows huge and happily eats Kang's guards. Guess he can do that! Supergiant Scott runs to prevent Kang's escape, and Cassie, seeming to be losing to MODOK, enlarges herself and fights him. She knocks him down and pivotally tells him to stop being a dick. It's never too late to stop being a dick. We've been tracking Cassie's story since Ant-Man 1, but in Phase 4, the MCU has unveiled almost all of the classic Young Avengers characters, and Cassie is Stature. So, yet another Young Avengers character, and that doesn't include one of Kang's variants, Iron Lad. Anyway, huge Cassie and huge Scott reunite and share a giant hug, mentioning how hungry for citrus being enormous makes them. Is there a scientific basis for that? Usually that indicates a vitamin C deficiency or dehydration, but it's not super clear. This may be a joke rather than something we should read into. Kang goes into a rage and energy blasts the freedom fighters, culminating in a bridge showdown with Hope, Scott, and Cassie. Again, Kang tells Scott this is out of his league. While he, Kang, can see everything, ever, the end of all, Scott can talk to ants. Right on cue, the technologically savvy ants show up and rock Kang shit with a super psyched Hank in tow. He's just having the best time. MODOK, who now wants to be known by his name, Darren, not MODOK, also shows up, turning on Kang and using his power against him too. He shouts, "I am not a dick!" All the way, Cassie really got to him with that "don't be a dick" stuff. Maybe she got it from Will Wheaton, who had that as an unofficial catchphrase for a while. Darren MODOK is dying. He tells Scott he was always a brother to him, which Scott finds surprising and awkward, but agrees to for Darren's sake. Darren says, "At least I died an Avenger," which again, everyone finds confusing and inaccurate, but they all awkwardly agree to make him feel better as he dies. Janet radios in from Kang's console in his palace that she thinks she's found one shot back, and they all gather to her as she opens a portal back to their world with Kang's restored technology. They all step in, but finally Scott pushes Cassie through the portal as he fights Kang, who had lunged up just while everyone was leaving. They get into a fight with Scott guarding the portal from Kang. Kang brutally slams his foot through Scott's helmet, saying, "You should have looked the other way, and I want you to remember you could have gone home, you could have seen your daughter again, but you thought you could win." And Scott tells him,
"I don't have to win. We both just have to lose."
Scott sabotages the multiversal engine component with his PIM disc, but is getting beaten pretty soundly until Hope flies in, back through the portal before it closes, saving Scott and helping him defeat Kang. They did it, but they're trapped. They hold each other and know at least they saved their home and the people of the quantum realm, but then Cassie opens a portal from home for them to come home anyway. At least they know they would have risked it all. And once again, everything is cool. Scott relives his opening scene, walking down the street and getting adored for being a hero. He picks up a birthday cake from Baskin-Robbins, his old boss badly made himself, and meets his family at a restaurant for a pretend birthday party for Cassie's not birthday. Scott's missed a lot and wants to make up for it, and not in a time and space breaking way, you know? He wonders if they actually did defeat Kang, if Kang saying something bad would happen if he didn't get out was true, and he doomed everyone. He spirals a little, but comes to the conclusion that it'll be fine. And that's how the movie ends. And since there is an Avengers Kang Dynasty movie out there on the horizon, it's safe to say that Scott was super duper wrong about this. Okay, enough about the actual movie. What about those post-credits scenes? First up, mid-credits, 3 different Kang variants talk to each other. They're recognizable as Rama-Tut, the ancient Egyptian ruler, Immortus, who in the comics has cosmic power learned from the Timekeepers, and the third one is not the most clear to identify, but he looks the most like Scarlet Centurion, but he isn't wearing scarlet, so there's the difference. No matter really, because the versions of Kang are pretty much endless, as the scene goes on to show. They confirm that Kang from the quantum realm is dead, but they need to mobilize because they, referring to Ant-Man and company, along with probably all the other heroes, are starting to touch the multiverse, and they'll ruin everything the Kangs have built. Then we zoom out to see the full Council of Kangs, all different ones, including a Skrull, as they get together to unite their forces as the biggest MCU threat so far, including Thanos and the Infinity Stone-powered Ultron from Marvel's What If. Next is the post-credit scene. We see another Kang variant, Victor Timely, in a period that vibes pretty steampunk. Early 1900s. He's giving a presentation about all his technological inventions, and we see in the crowd Loki and Mobius from the TVA blending in. Loki is very threatened and fearful, whereas Mobius thinks this is a joke. This Victor Timely isn't scary, but Loki knows that this is who He Who Remains warned him about. In the comics, Victor Timely is Kang Prime, the Kangest Kang. He's the original the variant split from, and he went back in time to change the course of history with all his mentioned technological advancements. While Rama-Tut, Immortus, and Scarlet Centurion represent extremely strong Kang variants, Timely is the biggest threat. Kang Prime is from the distant future, where he discovers his ancestors' time machine and travels through time, getting into fights and meeting people we've heard of, including Apocalypse, Khonshu, Doctor Strange, and Ravonna Renslayer from Loki Season 1. He spawns countless divergent realities and variants who also spawn their own timelines and alternate selves. Time gets extremely unlinear, and it's a little difficult to follow which Kang is doing what, but there's a lot of every Kang everywhere all at once. Victor Timely, though, goes back to 1901 and founds Timely, Wisconsin, a technological center establishing himself as a brilliant innovator and leader introducing new technologies to the world. Simultaneously, he created a hub for all time in history called Chronopolis, where he exists as the ruler Kang Prime, his true form. There, he gathers warriors from time to his side, calling them the Anachronauts. And this is the moment the MCU officially enters its multiversal era. It's going to be a little confusing, undoubtedly, with all the splits and variants. It seems likely, with the second scene in mind, that Loki Season 2 will be essential watching to understand just what the heck is going on. Perhaps we'll learn along with this version of Mobius. It's a pretty exciting time, MCU-wise, even if this Ant-Man movie was not really your thing. Personally, I thought it was uneven but enjoyable, though more along the middle if we're ranking Marvel movies, with Evangeline Lilly and Michael Douglas a little underutilized in their roles. But as I pointed out several times this Ant-Man adventure show, there's always room to grow, even with Scott starting the movie at his highest status ever, with Scott moving to care and help others even though he and his own world gained nothing from it personally. The movie nicely sets up who Cassie Lang is, and I'm excited to see where she fits into the next generation of heroes. I mean the Young Avengers! We're ready for them! But I'm not a reviewer, I just like catching patterns and analyzing the stories and characters we love. Did you like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and do you think it's the best Ant-Man movie? What do you think Luis, Dave, and Kurt are up to, and do you think we'll ever see them again? Let us know down in the comments. Thanks for watching this episode of Cannon Fodder. I'm Kim Horcher, and for more Ant-Man, here's why we think he's such a linchpin character for the MCU, so make sure to check that out, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.